Good afternoon to all of you who have joined this session. It's a delight for me to be part of this interactive event. I hope all of you are doing safe and fine. And I'll attempt to share with you some of my thoughts and perspectives around developing strategic leadership of an organization. Strategic leadership is the key to business performance. What differentiates high performing organizations from the rest is actually the presence of strategic leadership. If you demonstrate strategic leadership, you are likely to have sustained high performance. If you do not demonstrate strategic leadership, sooner or later, performance is likely to stagnate and even drop. So it's a critical area to focus on if we are running a business. Right? So I'll just take you to what are some of the key objectives that we are looking at achieving in this session. So first is to understand what is strategic leadership. What do we mean when we say strategic leadership? Then we move on to what are the key building blocks or elements that will help us move towards strategic leadership. And finally, we will also look at how to assess and improve the health of our business. So these are the three session objectives that we'll be looking at. And let's move on to actually what is strategic leadership. Okay. So strategic leadership is about making decisions, aligning resources, and executing actions that result in a competitive advantage for the organization, which translates in turn into superior financial performance. So the key thing here is it is not about making the routine operational decisions and managing the day-to-day issues and crises that may happen, but it is more about looking not only at the short term, but the medium term and the long term, and to make a set of decisions and execute those decisions flawlessly so that you are able to achieve a competitive advantage. So the purpose of strategic leadership is really competitive advantage. And what is competitive advantage? So it is simply a position of superiority in relation to competition. So all of us are aware we are in a very dynamic, complex, ever-changing and competitive world where competition is intensifying and customer preferences are continuously changing, and they have many more options than before. So in such an environment, the purpose of having strategic leadership is really to create this position of superiority in relation to competition, an edge in relation to competition. And how does this competitive advantage actually happen? It is simply through serving customers better than competitors and in the process making money. So all the three elements are critical. We want to serve customers in a superior way as compared to what competitors can do. And in the process, we also want to capture the value, part of the value that we generate for the customers. Right? So this is, in essence, is what competitive advantage is all about. And the purpose of strategic leadership is to bestow a competitive advantage for the organization. To understand this a little better, there are actually two key components for strategic leadership to actually happen. One is what we call the strategy, which is nothing but a stream of consistent decisions that we make in the pursuit of competitive advantage. So they are coherent, consistent decisions and not haphazard ad hoc decisions, because they are aligned to a certain aspiration, a certain vision, a certain strategic and financial objective. So that is what is strategy. And then we have the second element, which is execution, which is making the strategy happen on the ground and thereby actually get the results expected. So what we find is, let's take the example of a PC manufacturer, a leading PC manufacturer, to sort of understand this better. And this PC manufacturer has been the pioneer in terms of mass customization. So the value proposition, what they wanted to offer the customer is simple. Okay, they said that you can go online or you can connect with our customer service representative on phone and you can design your own PC. Okay, so whether it is the processor, whether it is RAM, whether it is ROM, whether it is the size of the display screen, so you can select and make your own PC. You can configure that either online or you can speak on phone to our customer representative and you can place the order. So you can make your own PC. Added to that, you will have this PC in your hands in 48 hours. Right? It's also about how quickly the person will get what he or she wants. And added to that, it's all going to happen at an affordable price. So this is the value which the PC manufacturer is trying to provide the customer. So what does this require? So this is the value that we want to create. This is the strategy that we have in mind as to how we want to serve the customer in a superior way as compared to competition. But what does it require? How will it actually happen? So we need information to flow real time from the customer to the PC manufacturer and all the suppliers who are tied to the PC manufacturer. So in real time, this information must flow, and in real time, there's actually a build to order that is happening, and therefore the various components as identified by the customer are actually pulled together, and a PC is created that is exactly in line with what the customer wants, and it gets delivered in a couple of days. So to make this happen, so what did this manufacturer do? So a number of supplier partnerships. So a strong supply chain, number of supply chain partnerships, and integration with technology across all of these suppliers, and proximity of suppliers for certain components to quickly move to the manufacturer. So all of these elements had to be in place to make this strategy happen. So often we miss one or the other. Either we have a strategy or a insightful business idea which will help us in getting superior customer satisfaction as compared to competition, but in execution we miss out. Or we are in general good at execution, but we either have no strategy or have a poor strategy. So therefore, what this grid here shows is that if we want to move towards strategic leadership, we must be brilliant in our strategy, we must be flawless in our execution. So therefore, what you see in green, that's the quadrant where strategic leadership can really happen, right? So because this PC manufacturer could put together the various activities, or what we call the activity system, and had the capability to actually run it, that's how this strategy got actualized, and there was actually visible strategic and financial performance on the ground, right? What happens if you don't have a great strategy and great execution? Let's say you have a great strategy but poor execution. So then it results in a missed opportunity. You had a great idea but didn't work out. Maybe someone else will actually hit upon this idea and implement it for their own benefit. What happens if you neither have a strategy or you have a poor strategy and execution also is inadequate? So this is a case of being doomed right from the start, and it's a hopeless situation to be in, because neither you have an insightful business idea nor you have the capability to execute anything at all. So therefore you're doomed right from the start. Potential disaster, okay, this particular box in brown. So this is an interesting thing, because here you either have no clear strategy or you have a poor strategy, and you have excellent or great execution, and this will accelerate your downfall. Potentially it can bring you to underperformance because you're executing well in the wrong direction. So what are the building blocks of strategic leadership, right? What are some things we need to do to actually get there? What are the key elements? The first thing is being able to make sense of the environment that we operate in. So when we look at, let's say, the economy in which we operate. So how is the economy growing? How are various sectors in the economy growing? How is the demand supply equation in various sectors? Where is there an opportunity and where is there a dampening of opportunity, right? So that is the economy. Then we also look at the government. Okay, what is the policy of the government? Are there some opportunities coming up because of that, or is there something that we need to gear up and prepare for because of what is happening? For example, right now in the current situation, when we look at the government policy, it seems to be a thrust towards enhancing exports and a thrust towards import substitution, right? It seems to be about how to enhance liquidity in the current COVID situation, and therefore how to pump in as much liquidity into the economy as possible, right? And towards this, there is a 3 lakh crore that has been allocated for MSME sector. There's a redefinition of the MSME sector, right? Like from 25 lakhs, it's now 1 crore. So it's 1 crore, 10 crore and 20 crore is the kind of investment, micro, small and medium, and the corresponding turnover in terms of 5 crore, 50 crore and 100 crore, right? So there's a redefinition going, and further the medium is likely to be enhanced in terms of definition, right? So we need to be aware and alert as to what are these things happening in from a government policy perspective, and what are the implications for us from those policy announcements. There's also the point of view that because of the anti-China sentiment, a lot of MNCs will move to India, and also whatever was earlier being imported from China potentially would be imported from India, and therefore are we geared up to leverage that opportunity? The next aspect we look at, and of course, in the environment, we also look at our customers, how is their business shaping up, how is their the demand for their products and services, and what are the implications of that for us? How are customer preferences changing? How is their, what are the key challenges or priorities that they have? So it's important to be aware of this, and also how competition is moving. What are the initiatives they are taking, right? So this is all part of sensing what is happening in the environment, and we can spot what are the opportunities or what are the threats, what we need to gear up for. Similarly, when we look inward at what are we really good at, okay, having run business for several years or many years, so what are the competencies, capabilities, knowledge, expertise, skills that we have developed, right? It's good to have a clear grasp of those competencies, because instead of looking at ourselves as a set of products, services, or solutions that we currently offer, it's good to imagine ourselves to be people having certain resources and capabilities, knowledge, skills, expertise, and how can we best leverage this in the current context so that we are able to have a viable business, right? So that's what is the sense-making aspect of this. And then we look at the key strategic decisions to be made once we have a clear appreciation of opportunities, threats, and our internal competencies. The first question to offer is really what products, services, or solutions do we want to offer, right? And the second one is which markets, where do we want to actually operate? So the first two decisions on top, the what and where, is also called the product market domain identification, right? And that's key in terms of the starting point to define what your business is all about. But then beyond that, it's important to know whom do we want to serve. Okay, whose needs are we trying to fulfill, or what specific problem are we trying to solve for a customer group? So whom are we trying to serve, and for whom should we be creating value, right? That's the third question, that is, which are the customer groups that we want to focus on? The next important question is, okay, we want to focus on those customer groups and deliver value to them, but what really constitutes value to them? What is more valuable to them? What is less valuable to them? And what is it that they're indifferent to and they don't bother about? So why will they buy? What is this value creation that I'm doing, right? That's the fourth question. The fifth one is, while we have a sense of what is the value we want to create to the customer, how do we actually do it? What is the activity system in place? So if you remember the earlier example of the PC manufacturer, so the value that we want to create is give a totally customized product in 48 hours at an affordable price. The activity system is the network of supply chain partners that we have, and the technology integration and the customer service skills that people need to have to be able to actually make that value delivered to the customer, right? So that's the activity system. And as I mentioned earlier, it's also in the process we should be able to make money. So therefore, what is the viability of this proposition? If we were to serve these customer groups by delivering this perceived value using the activity system that we have chosen, finally, are we left with a margin or not? Are we able to capture some value out of the value that we have created for the customer? So that's the question around viability. And as you will see, when you make a choice whom to serve, you are also making a choice whom not to serve. So for example, in the earlier PC manufacturer case, who are the potential customers, or what is the customer group that is being targeted? So only those customers who are tech savvy and comfortable from their PC or on phone to be able to figure out what exactly they want, only those customer groups will actually be potential customers for this value proposition. Which means that while trying to serve these customer groups in a unique way, we are automatically not able to serve certain other customer groups who actually need to see the product, feel it in their hands, ask a few questions while touching the particular PC or product, and only then they are able to make the buy decision, right? So therefore, every time we make a decision to do one thing, we are making a decision not to do the other, right? So that's important to bear in mind. Strategy is as much about choosing what you will do as it is about choosing what you will not do. When we make the right choices across these 6 questions, the key strategic decisions, that is what will lead to competitive advantage. And competitive advantage in turn leads to financial performance. So the relationship is simple. If you have competitive advantage, if you're able to sustain competitive advantage, then the financial performance will go up. So let's now look at the core concept that is central to competitive advantage. So there are 3 things we need to be very clear about. So what is value, what is price, what is margin, and also what is cost. So value is what is perceived by the customer and therefore what the customer is willing to pay. So that is what we call value. Cost again is simple. We know it is what it costs us to produce and deliver the product, service, or solution. So that is C here. And then P is the price at which we are selling. Please note that it is different from the cost of production and delivery. Cost of production and delivery is C, which is what it costs the business to actually make it. Price is what the business will charge the customer. And V is different from price. It indicates how much value the customer perceives and therefore how much the customer is willing to pay for the particular product or service or solution that we are offering. So therefore what we find is, what is our profit margin? It is simply price minus cost. So you have the option of deciding the price point. Okay. So it can be anywhere above your cost and below the value that you are creating for the customer. And what we have, V minus P, that means value you have created for the customer minus the price the customer is paying for it, is what we call the customer surplus. To that extent, the customer is quite happy and thrilled. Customer was willing to pay V amount, but customer is getting the product or service or solution at P amount, and therefore there's a surplus which makes the customer feel good, feel happy. And when it comes to the business, we are looking at the profit margin, which is the price minus the cost. And if there is that differential that exists, it helps us to continue running our business in a sustainable way. And therefore, profit margin is a critical aspect of all decisions that we make. If we don't have a profit margin, we will not be there to service the customer. So therefore, it's critical to see what, and it's a judicious decision to make as to what should be the pricing point. You want to make the customer happy, at the same time you want to ensure your margin. So key thing to remember here, the greater the gap between value and the cost, the greater the potential for competitive advantage that you have. The narrower the gap between value and cost of production, the less leverage you have in terms of being able to achieve a competitive advantage and financial performance through that. So one thing all of us should think is, what can I do to enhance the value delivered to the customer while controlling my cost? How can I widen the gap between the value delivered to the customer and the cost at which I'm able to do it? So this leads us to, this value cost concept leads us actually to the different kinds of advantage that we can have. So just look at the extreme left, the bars that you have on the extreme left. So this is about the industry average competitor. So this is an average player in the industry. Now vis-a-vis this average player, if you want to be successful, what do you do? So one option is successful differentiation. Okay. What is successful differentiation? You add more features and benefits to the product or service or solution, or you add superior quality of service and support, maybe after sale. So you add certain features like that, and therefore the perceived value of the customer goes up and the customer is willing to pay more. So the orange bar is really about the willingness of the customer to pay or the value perceived by the customer. Because you are adding certain features and benefits, the value perceived by the customer and customer willingness to pay is going up in the case of differentiation. But whenever you want to provide additional features or benefits, the business incurs a cost. So you can see that the vis-a-vis the average player, look at the blue color bar and you notice that it has actually gone up. Now, should we differentiate and will it lead to better margin and financial performance? So that depends on what is the price premium the customer is willing to pay for the additional feature that you have provided. Because we are incurring a cost, the price premium which the customer is willing to pay must be much greater than the additional cost we are incurring to be able to provide that feature. So this is important to remember. It's not just trying superior value to the customer, but we need to be mindful of what is the cost we are incurring in the process and what is the impact on our margin. So another strategy is to be a low-cost competitor, a successful low-cost competitor. So here, if you see, for not much reduction in customer willingness to pay, okay, compared to the average player, the willingness to pay has only dropped marginally, but the cost structure is shifting dramatically downwards. So again, you've been able to increase the gap between value and cost by doing this. So you've removed a couple of features from what you're offering the customer, and therefore you have reduced customer value or willingness to pay, but the cost you are saving is much more, or your cost structure has shifted down quite a bit, and therefore you will gain in this case as well. A last case, which is relatively rare, is where we are looking at a competitor with dual advantage, which means that there's a simultaneous reduction in your cost structure as well as an increase in customer willingness to pay as compared to the industry average player, right? So this is a rare situation because it's impossible normally to simultaneously lower your cost as well as increase value delivered or value perceived by the client. So this can happen when what we call value innovation happens. So when you are able to identify features which add new value to the customer and identify those features which are less important to the customer, so you're very carefully mapping out which elements of the customer experience or customer service or the product that you're trying to reduce and which elements you're trying to increase. So the elements that you're trying to increase or provide more of is something extremely valued by the customer, and the customer is not minding certain features that you're removing. So like I said, this is a rare case, but can happen if you value innovate. Now this leads us to actually broadly three kind of strategies that we can go for. One is a low cost strategy. The other is a differentiation strategy. The third is what we call a focused strategy. The focused strategy can be either cost focus or a differentiation focus. So let's try to look at what each of this means, right? When you're looking at a low cost leadership strategy, it is important that your cost structure is the lowest in the industry, because this will help you to be able to have a leverage on price. So your product is essentially more or less a commodity or slightly better than a commodity, and the customer perceives that it meets the functionality or value or utility what the customer is looking for, and compared to competition you seem to be offering the lowest price or you are offering it at the cheapest price, right? So to be able to do this, you need a dramatically lower cost structure as compared to other players, because if somebody else cuts price and you also end up cutting price, then it really depends. Only one player can survive whose cost structure is lowest, right? Otherwise, in the game of cutting price, so somebody will hit the limit in terms of reaching to zero margin and even a loss. So therefore, we should be careful about using a cost leadership. We should not apply this strategy if we do not have the lowest cost structure in the industry. So there can be only one cost leader in an industry actually. Now, when we look at the differentiation strategy, so we are looking at adding features, adding benefits, adding maybe intangible value all of that to the product, service, or solution, so that the customer willingness to pay goes up, and our cost goes up, but only marginally as compared to the price premium the customer is willing to pay. So that's when you are able to use a differentiation strategy. So there are customers wanting to buy your product or service or solution because it seems to offer superior value, and I don't mind paying a little more for that. Okay, so that's the differentiation strategy. Then we look at a focus strategy. The focus strategy comes into play if you are able to identify an underserved customer. For example, if there's a customer who wants a lot of things, but the current players in the market don't seem to fulfill all of those needs, you can choose to focus on that particular segment of customers which are underserved and try to give them exclusive and superior value which nobody else can provide them. And for this, you can charge a premium and they may be willing to pay this premium price. So that is a focused differentiation strategy. When we look at a focused low-cost strategy, then we are looking at a customer segment that is overserved. That means the customer doesn't want all of these features, but still no competitor or no player in the market seems to offer a product without frills, a product which is more basic. And therefore, the customer is ending up paying for certain features which the customer does not want. And therefore, if you are able to identify such customer segments and remove all the frills and make it a more basic product at a lower price, they would go with you. So that's the focused low-cost strategy. To understand this better, I think it's useful to look at, let's say, the automotive industry. So the current market leader in India, for example, in the automotive industry is actually a low-cost leader, right? So if you take any segment, any category of vehicle, their pricing seems to be the most reasonable, affordable, and sometimes the cheapest. So the current market leader in the automotive passenger car segment, I mean. So in the passenger car segment, you find that the dominant player or the market leader is actually a cost leader, right? When we look at certain Japanese brands, Japanese cars that are in, we find that they're actually employing a differentiation strategy. So superior quality, greater reliability, better performance, excellent customer service. So all this combined, and maybe better styling and looks. So all this combined is the additional value what the Japanese cars seem to be providing the customer, and the customer is willing to pay a premium for all of this. And as long as the cost at which these additional features are being provided is lower than the premium that the customer is willing to pay, these companies will do well. Multiple differentiation strategies can exist in the same market. So therefore, you find some German cars as well that are premium brands that are trying to use the differentiation strategy. So the only difference between the Japanese car makers and the German car makers seems to be in terms of the kind of exclusivity and brand image and styling that is being provided by the German cars, right? So therefore, there's an intangible feature of a connection with the brand and feeling a sense of pride when you go with certain brands. There are some, in terms of the finish, in terms of the styling, in terms of performance, in terms of certain exclusive features with, leveraging technology. So all these are being provided in some of the premier brands, and here the premium pricing is even more, and the cost incurred, as long as it is relatively less compared to the increase in price what the customer is willing to take on. So therefore that strategy would work as well. So therefore it's possible for multiple differentiation strategies to coexist. But when we look at cost leadership, there can be only one undisputed cost leader in an industry. Now, looking at the same passenger car market, so you also have examples of focused differentiation. So if you look at the luxury sport cars, these are examples of focused differentiation. That means we have identified a certain customer group or a customer segment that is willing to pay much, much more if they are able to experience luxury, if they are able to experience association with a superior and well-acclaimed brand. So all of this, and therefore they seem to be operating in a niche differentiation strategy. So let's also look at the steel industry, just like we looked at the passenger car industry. Let's also look at the steel industry. So broadly, what are the kind of strategies that seem to be in operation in the global steel industry, right? So there are at one end uh, certain companies that are focusing on providing high quality steel, higher grades of steel, lightweight, corrosion resistant, abrasion resistant, and for with high precision and in sensitive areas, such steel is being required. And these companies, so particularly one company in Austria is reputed for this. So they are trying to see how they can provide such high quality steel, and not such a big company in terms of scale, but still they are able to deliver superior value and command a premium because of delivering that value. Now, how does this capability become a reality? How does this value become a reality for the customer? So for this to actually happen, there are certain capabilities required with that particular steel company, right? So the ability for product leadership, product innovation, process innovation, being able to provide specialized technical services, and a strong R&D department, and a tight linkage or a close relationship between the customer and the sales team, and between the sales team and the R&D team. Because of existence of all of these capabilities, they are able to deliver the committed value by providing high grade lightweight steel, which is corrosion resistant and abrasion resistant, right? So this is one strategy which some companies might aspire to follow, and they follow, and that is what we call a differentiation strategy. Like I said, differentiation strategy, multiple players can coexist with different kinds of differentiation. So another kind of differentiation, for example, one of the German steel companies provides, is really about flexibility in terms of order size and flexible lead times. So you can ask for much more order volume, or you may shrink the order volume, and you may give this order well in advance, or you may give it at short notice. Whatever it is, the commitment is to be able to deliver that as per the requirement of the customer. So this is the strategy being followed by one of the steel companies in Germany. And here, what are the capabilities underlying this, right? So it's about having an agile and responsive supply chain, and therefore multiple plants, multiple supply chain partnerships, partnerships with contractors, and all this technology integrated and enabled, so that data moves in real time and responsiveness can happen in real time. So these are the capabilities and activities underlying, the promise of being able to provide flexibility in terms of lead times as well as in terms of the order volume, right? So similarly, we also have, just like we had in the automotive industry, passenger car industry, the market leader that was a low cost company, a low cost strategy company. So here we have again one of the companies in the steel industry that is focused on low cost. So what? So it's about providing the uh, product at the cheapest price, and it is almost like a commodity, undifferentiated, but great value for money and very cheap. Okay. So what are the capabilities underlying such a strategy? So one of the companies in Russia has this kind of a strategy, a steel company. So what are the capabilities that underlie this? And so this is about ensuring that your plants are located in those geographies where labor cost is minimal, where regulation is not very rigorous in terms of labor, in terms of carbon footprint, and so on. And it's about staying or sticking to the core assets that you require, and getting rid of everything else, outsourcing certain things as required, and therefore structure, and you're able to offer the cheapest price, right? So therefore this is about uh, the competitive strategies that we may pursue based on the competitive advantage that we are seeing. So you may clearly see the link. So it is about, one, having a clear understanding of value and cost, using that understanding to drive a greater wedge between value and cost, value that you create for the customer and the cost at which you are able to create that value, and using that to create a competitive advantage for yourself, wherein you are trying to look at what features to provide additionally or what features to withhold, so that you are able to maintain the cost structure appropriately and you're able to do the pricing appropriately, so that you have sustainable margins to be able to run the business well. So let's look at what are some ways of actually differentiating yourself. So the key is then being able to differentiate yourself from competition. I want to deliver superior value to the customer, or a different kind of value and functionality to the customer. And while doing so, I do it better than competition and differently than competition. And I want to ensure I'm able to preserve this difference so that my advantage with the customer and vis-a-vis competition is sustainable. So what are some possible elements on which we could differentiate ourselves? So one is, for example, the speed of delivery. So this is not a comprehensive list. This is just an illustrative list. So for example, from the time you receive the order to the time you deliver, you make a certain commitment to the customer and you stick to that. You are able to execute. And let's say another proposition is being able to deliver direct to the customer's production line. So certain tier 1 suppliers, for example, in the automotive industry, so they are able to deliver directly to the production line and there is no quality check at the customer end. All of that is taken care of fully and there's zero risk for the customer because the supplier is able to maintain such high quality and zero defectives. So for example, bearings in the two-wheeler industry sometimes are supplied directly for use on the production line. So another way to differentiate is actually to be good at new component development, where there is a partnership or collaboration between the OEM and tier 1, tier 2 suppliers, right? So what happens here is that there is a visibility or there is a plan for the customer as to what kind of components they would be looking for in future, and there's a joint effort by the OEM and by the tier 1, tier 2 suppliers to be able to think through as to how to create this kind of a component in the most cost effective way. And therefore there is some amount of investment that happens at the supplier end, some amount of investment that happens at the manufacturer's end, OEM's end. And therefore it is about if we actually achieve a breakthrough in terms of a better component at a lower price, so how will the benefit be shared? So this is one of the challenges in working out this kind of a collaborative arrangement. But to the extent you are able to provide this kind of collaboration, you become more of a preferred vendor for the OEM or the tier 1 supplier. So this is critical. So one way to see that the supplier gets the benefit is really to pass on part of the benefit in terms of pricing to the end customer, which results in increase in volume of sales for the OEM, and which should automatically translate into higher volume of orders for the suppliers, right? The other thing can be whatever savings have been achieved, they can be shared between the manufacturer and the supplier, right? But this is where there's often a struggle in terms of working out the best arrangement, though there is positive intent on both sides to actually collaborate and innovate. The other thing is to make really customized, what exactly the customer wants, tailoring the product, tailoring the component to exactly what the customer wants, right? And for this, it's important sometimes for the representative from the supplier to actually be present in the customer side and try to understand the entire customer, how the customer is using the component or product, and what are in terms of opportunities to improve the product or component, and proactively initiating that, and also looking at the specific needs of the customer and trying to modify in a timely way whatever is required by the customer. So there is actually a micro enterprise in UP that makes rubber springs and rubber profiles, and they have made a commitment to their customers saying that any new item that the customer wants, they will deliver in 96 hours. They'll design it in 96 hours and make it ready. If they are not able to develop that particular item in 96 hours, they will deliver the consignment free. So there's a commitment like that they have made, and they actually happen to supply to to Doha Airport, and also some OEMs in India. So a couple of OEMs in India directly buy from them, and also they have been exporting quite a bit of what they produce. So there's a micro enterprise in UP, and there seems to be a lot of prospects for growth, given the way they are able to fulfill their customer requirements in a very customized way and very quickly. So the other way to potentially add value and differentiate is to offer integrated solutions. So this typically happens at a tier 1 level, wherein the OEMs may be looking for less of a botheration in terms of being able to assemble various things at their end, and actually pass on some amount of assembling, a mini assembly, to actually happen at the tier 1 level. And sometimes it can happen at a tier 2 level as well. So can I reduce the number of touch points or contacts which my customer needs to have to fulfill the functional needs that they have, right? So if they are sourcing 3 components from 3 different agencies, can I actually be the single agency that can integrate everything? Maybe I can do something additionally in-house, and maybe something I'll partner with somebody else. But so far as my customer is concerned, I'm the single contact point. There's no need of dealing with 3 different agencies, right? So this is what we call an integrated solution. And actually in the automotive sector, we find that there's increasing demand for each tier to move up the value chain, right? And so therefore a tier 1 actually becomes a 0.5. Instead of tier 1, it becomes tier 0.5, and tier 2 moves towards actually tier 1. And so therefore, are we geared up, if we are into auto ancillaries, are we geared up for this kind of a situation where there is superior value and upgradation in terms of capabilities expected from each tier? So this, of course, is the value for money is being the cheapest in the market for a certain value delivered. So convenience is another option. So for example, do I make it easy for my customer to deal with me, to engage with me? Maybe I integrate online with the systems that the customer has. And therefore it's easy, information flow, communication, service becomes easy. Then a high level of customer service or exceptional customer service with tight timelines on response and complaint resolution. So then it's also about brand reputation and image. So if the customer trusts in my integrity, competence, and commitment, that itself could be an intangible value that we are delivering to the customer. And potentially the customer is willing to pay more if brand image and reputation exist. So then quality, durability is the other aspect. So there is, for example, a small enterprise in Ludhiana that actually makes sheet metal parts, and that actually supplies to truck body. Produce is actually exported to the US and Germany, and they're doing extremely well. So therefore, this is a how do you ensure excellent quality, repeatability, durability, and therefore the customer is willing to pay more. Then enhancing customer efficiency. So can you come up with ideas which will help the customer to improve their process efficiency? So this is about that. So at some stage, if you understand the customer's business exceedingly well, you may actually come up with ideas which will help the customer to improve their processes and enhance their efficiency. So in this case, you're actually functioning as a consultant for the customer, and that is a certain kind of value which the customer is willing to pay for. And this we spoke about earlier. It's the flexibility to scale up and down on volume and on delivery dates. So can you be adaptive to customer demand and be responsive whenever there is uncertainty and they make changes in terms of what they want, or at short notice they demand something? Can you adapt to this fluctuation? Do you have the capability to do that? So this again is a value that the customer sees in this and is potentially willing to pay for it. though you might incur additional cost in your operation. So therefore, it's important to notice that we have multiple options on how to differentiate, and what is important is to see how do we want to differentiate ourselves, right? Because if you are able to differentiate yourself by providing superior value and at not much additional cost to you, that means the customer is willing to pay a price premium which exceeds the additional cost you have to invest, then you have a clear competitive advantage in place, and that leads to superior financial performance. So this is a useful matrix to look at. It's called the business driver matrix. So on the horizontal axis, you have your performance, strength, and differentiation vis-a-vis competitors. And on the vertical axis, you have how relevant is the attribute to the customer group. So there are certain attributes which every customer looks for, or every customer group looks for. And there are certain attributes where we have strong capabilities and we outperform competitors. And we are so different from them in terms of what we can deliver that we are able to sustain this difference without by the customer. Sorry, by the competitor. So therefore here, if we see, we'll spend a couple of minutes on this. So if we see here, what we find is that what are the attributes important to the customer and relevant to the customer? So we have speed of delivery, we have integrated solutions, and quality and durability, and next comes value for money, right? If we look at what are we as a business extremely good at and differentiated from competitors, we find that we are good on speed of delivery, quality and durability of what we offer. We are excellent on customer service and fairly good at convenience as well. So therefore, by looking at this, we can see that those attributes in green, speed of delivery and quality and durability, is where there is an intersection or there's a commonality, or it is the sweet spot where we could focus on, because this is important to the customer and we are extremely good at providing this vis-a-vis competition. So therefore, there are three things we can potentially do here. So one is we can strengthen our advantage, strengthen our capability, and further deepen the value proposition on speed of delivery and quality and durability so far as this customer group is concerned. The second thing we can do is, since integrated solutions are important for the customer, being able to provide integrated solutions, and that is not our current strength vis-a-vis competition, we can choose to invest resources to build this capability and move integrated solutions to the right so that it falls into an area where competitively we become superior, right? So that is one option that we have. And then to this customer group, we can offer the top three that they are looking for. And therefore, we might potentially have a clear advantage vis-a-vis competition, right? The other thing we can do, we are good at customer service. We provide exceptional or outstanding customer service. Can we educate the customer to believe and understand that why customer service is a critical element in terms of their own business performance and execution? If they agree and customer service moves up in terms of relevance to this customer group, then automatically we have an edge in terms of customer service, and we can leverage that to deliver superior service to the customer vis-a-vis what competitors can offer, right? So these are some ways you can utilize this matrix. It's an interesting matrix, and for your own business, you could attempt this and see what are we really good at, where do we have a competitive strength vis-a-vis competition, and do these attributes on which we have a competitive strength actually matter for the customer group. So therefore, these are the questions you need to really answer. On what attributes do you differentiate yourself from competitors, and how do you create superior value to customers in a way that competitors cannot, right? So this is about what is the value proposition that you are going to offer customers, which is more an insightful idea, and you may have some thought as to how you can make this happen, right? Actually making it happen is the execution part, which you need to be really good at, otherwise this will remain a dream and an unrealized opportunity. So therefore, what we need to do is to look at if we in fact are able to deliver this superior value through a combination of the right activities, the right capabilities in place, then how do we preserve this difference so that competitors do not imitate this, do not replicate this, and therefore we might lose the advantage that we currently hold. So it's about having activities which are unique and different from what competitors perform, and competitors may not actually know what are these activities that you perform, right? And then maybe there is a depth of skills, knowledge, expertise associated with execution in delivering this value. And it's difficult to actually acquire these skills, knowledge, and expertise because a lot of it may be developed through experience on the job, and a lot of it is tacit knowledge. And maybe you have specialized talent which you've been able to successfully retain, and therefore that gives you an advantage, and competitors do not have access to such specialized talent. Or it could be that you've been ahead of the curve in terms of adopting the appropriate technology and very progressive in developing capabilities in your people to actually embrace the appropriate technology, new technology that has come up. So that could be a source of maintaining this difference. Or the most sort of invisible and tacit thing is how we work together, okay, in the organization, in the business. So that is what we call culture. So maybe we have a way of working and supporting each other, and we have such high alignment in terms of what we want to do. There's a high level of clarity, focus, and collaboration that we are able to work in a way that gives us this advantage. It's not easy for customers, though they see what is happening, they cannot imitate because they lack that kind of a culture, ways of working, right? And therefore, through all such things, you are able to preserve the difference that you have established vis-a-vis competitors in terms of delivering the superior value to the customer, which currently competitors are unable to. Okay, so I now move to the last aspect, which is about how to assess the health of your business. So a key aspect is customers. So is customer satisfaction going up, or is it declining, or is it stagnating, right? What is the trend of customer satisfaction? How do existing customers feel about the product, service, solution that they are receiving from you? The next thing to look at is your business increasing from the existing customers? So business can increase in two ways. So either your existing customers are buying more of what they were anyway buying, or maybe you've been able to solve new needs of theirs or solve new problems that they have through additional products and services that you could offer. So both these ways you can increase the business with your existing customers. The third aspect is about, are you expanding your customer base, or are you excessively dependent on a few customers? So it's critical to expand the customer base, and this is where attracting new customers and showing the appropriate value proposition to them becomes important. And sometimes you might want to look how your existing products serve new customers. You can also look at, do I need to move to adjacent products which might attract new customers? So, but it's important to see that customer base is growing, volume of business from existing customers is growing, and customer satisfaction delight is happening. The next aspect is about cash generation. This is critical, and I think everyone would have become very clearly aware of it regardless of the size of the organization in the current context of COVID, right? So therefore, this is nothing but what is the cash inflow that you have minus the cash outflow. A second important aspect related to cash generation is the velocity of operations. So how much time does it take, or what period elapses between the raw material flowing into your business, the raw material getting processed and converted into a component, product, etc., and getting shipped to the customer, and you receiving the payment from the customer, right? So this whole thing is the velocity of operation. So you have invested some amount in terms of getting the raw material, paying the labor, making the process conversion, paying the logistics agency potentially to actually move your product to the customer. At the end of this, how quickly does this whole cycle happen, right? So that's what we mean by the velocity of operation. The next aspect is the return on invested capital. So this is simply the profit after tax that you have divided by the invested capital into 100. And therefore, anything that you do to curtail expenses, anything that you do to increase revenues, and anything that you do with a limited capital base, all that adds to greater return on invested capital. And finally, the aspect of growth. Are we growing as a business? Because sometimes if we are not growing, then we are falling behind. So therefore, is growth happening? And whatever growth is happening, is it profitable? And is it sustainable? So these are the three questions we need to ask about how we are growing. And it's critical to see that growth is happening, both for the organization, the business, as well as the staff, employees of the organization. Okay, I will spend about 5 to 10 minutes and then I will open it up for a Q&A. So this is from a survey that was conducted by Professor Chitra Singla from IIM Ahmedabad, and it was published recently, that is in Business World, April 30th, 2020. So they were about 100 to 120 MSMEs were surveyed. They were asked what are the key challenges or issues that you're facing as on date because of the COVID-19 issue. So the first was working capital, second was labor, third customer, fourth logistics, and 5 other costs. Okay, so like we discussed, since cash generation has become an issue, so there's a working capital crunch. Second, how to pay labor when we are not actually having liquidity and getting paid by the customer. And even if we pay them, there is a risk that when the lockdown goes out, is removed, then labor might actually migrate to their native places, right? And there's also a high cost where the enterprise has huge labor intensity. So no new orders coming from the customers, and this of course varies from sector to sector. Some sectors are worse off than others, and some are decently performing. But chances are there's no order from the customer, and what happens that if for an extended period we don't have orders coming up, so there's a fear of losing customers over time. Then there's the aspect of managing logistics. So there's a difficulty issue in terms of raw material movement. There's a problem in terms of input prices because raw material prices fluctuating. Then there are the other costs which are about existing inventory. What do I do with that? It is logged. My cash is blocked. So how will that get cleared? Then some suppliers are asking for advance payment or immediate payment, which is difficult in the cash crunch. Then there are other fixed costs like rentals, license fees, internet fees, all of this. So therefore, these are based on the survey and responses to the survey from about 100 MSMEs. So this is the key challenges that have emerged. And in the context of the health of business, the 4 factors that we looked at, which is customer, cash generation, return on invested capital. So remember this, what we were speaking about. So assessing the health of your business. So and whether growth is happening or not, right? So these are the 4 factors we need to consider. And given these challenges, what are some options that MSMEs actually have in a situation like this? So you find here the 4 factors critical to assessment of business, which is customer, cash generation, return on investment capital, and invested capital, and growth of the business. So these are some steps that possibly could help, but different steps can help to different extents, and there is dependency on others. So at this point in time, it is critical actually to make a collaborative effort to engage and work closely with stakeholders and come up with a solution which is joint rather than individually as a business trying to see what anyone can do. Right? So the first possible solution is to look at review and add or remove product services. So therefore, don't stay limited by your existing set of products and services. Look at profitability, movement of these products and services. So work on those products and services for which there is some demand at least, and stay away from products and services which are less profitable, for which there is no demand. If required, given your capabilities, try to look if you can offer a new or different kind of service or product. Right? So look at customer or market demand, explore alternative markets and alternative customers. So this will have a positive impact on all 4 areas in terms of the business health. So then one thing you could do, since let's say we are saddled with inventory and our cash is locked there, so it's imperative that we somehow clear our inventory. So maybe you could give some discounts, increase sales, and thereby clear inventory. And whenever you give these discounts, it is with the condition that you are able to get payments from customers. Otherwise, what is the point in giving discounts, right? So then is there a possibility to extend contracts with customers in this period, right? That is what is to be explored. So a green means a clear positive effect on that parameter. Orange means that there could be a mixed effect or a partial effect in terms of what we want to do in terms of either return on invested capital or growth or any of the factors. The other thing we could do is how to curtail, which all organizations, regardless of size, are actually trying to do this at this stage. So reduce non-essential expenses, fixed expenses. Instead of committing that, can I move to a pay per use or pay as you go kind of a model? And therefore renegotiate with suppliers, landlords, see if you can defer your payments. Then definitely hold back on capex at this stage and see how you can maintain a minimal inventory, lean inventory. Then in terms of manpower, this is a solution more for the medium enterprises. So wage cutting, salary reduction, rolling back incentives. And for the micro and small enterprises, it's about provide labor with ration and basic facilities and not cash to ensure their well-being, at the same time not to give out too much of cash and spend, right? So then it's about whether the collateral free loans from government and any other loan related benefits that might come to the government, maybe some holiday on interest payment, etc. So I think it's related with the next point, which is about waiving off interest payment and taxes, if lobbying with the government to make that happen, and using digital marketing to reach out to potential customers. Maybe this will give you increased access to certain customers whom you could not otherwise reach out. And it will also help some of your staff to work from home if you implement appropriate technology. Okay, so in summary, so it is about strategic leadership. The route to strategic leadership is about demonstrating strategic clarity. That means have a clear vision of what is the competitive advantage you want to create and strengthen your value proposition. Continuously monitor and improve the health of your business, right? So therefore, what is important is you have strategic clarity, you make consistent, coherent decisions aligned with the strategy you want to follow, and ensure excellent and flawless execution. That will help you create sustained competitive advantage, and that will help you enhance and sustain financial performance. So thanks for joining the session. I'm now open for any Q&A.
Sir, thank you, Pradeep ji, for your guidance. You can see that these are overall or generic things which you have told. Whether there is a company, if I say I am in my production line or something, so I have a specific business model, and to how strategically you will help personally one-to-one to define the strategy, we can meet or we can see how you can guide on personal basis with company. So do you have such type of consultancy or personalized things which you do?
So I had not initiated such consulting in the past, but based on interest of people, so it is possible to work out an engagement with specific businesses that are keen to discuss their strategy, plans, and execution, how to do it. So I am open to that, but it's not been generally what I have been doing.
Yeah, because I am holding a post other than my company, like I am president of Laghu Udyog Bharti Pimpri Chinchwad. So, you know, we are SMEs around here in Pimpri Chinchwad. So we always find difficulty in defining our strategies. And now with the COVID-19, such type of situations come where you have to change your strategy for a few months, year. So that time we definitely need a guiding hand who will really help us out. Look, to have a generic thing, because we can't afford to have a consultant long time, like bigger companies, we can't hire people like bigger portfolios. So if you are some agencies which are helping for small scale, like you can say in lean manufacturing, government had given a good guidance to us by making a cluster of 10 people and then increasing the manufacturing capacity capabilities by implementing the lean production management on the shop floor. So this is also one of the need of the time that you should strategically see how you should grow your businesses.
Sure, sure. So I am open to a discussion. At the same time, I hope you have explored resources available on the government side of MSME, and because there are some training and consulting kind of services they seem to provide. So maybe potentially you can explore that as well to see what will help you. And in terms of the findings about MSMEs, generally what differentiates those who've been performing well, I'm not saying specific to the COVID challenge, but I'm saying in general what differentiates those enterprises that are performing well and those that are not performing so well is really, one is about the quality consciousness and quality focus and investment in the right kind of technology and machinery and not compromising there. The second is having a rigorous quality system implementation in place and giving a full commitment to that whenever you are serving customers. So the third one is about retaining talent that you have. So it's critical to retain the best talent that you have and not, ensure sustainability, continuity for that talent, so that you are able to deliver on your commitments without a gap and without any fluctuations. So these three factors have been found to be key for success of enterprises based on research.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And also thank you, Tata Ashram, for making this good presentation.
Good evening, sir. This was a very interesting presentation. My question is, I found this very relevant in the current times. Had we not been under the pandemic, how different would your presentation or content have been in reference to the strategic leadership? This is just out of curiosity. I need to understand.
Sure. So the initial set of slides that I had shown, except for analyzing the health of the business, right? So whatever I've discussed, in terms of analyzing the health of your business and looking at what are the current challenges in the current COVID context and what are some steps that potentially could be taken, except for those three, which I have deliberately sort of brought in the current COVID context. The rest of it is valid even beyond and with or without a COVID kind of crisis. Because what we find usually happens is that in a lot of organizations, even large organizations, and of course the medium, small enterprises, etc. So what happens is people are a lot engrossed and busy in running the day-to-day operations, and they are unable to get adequate time for reflection to visualize the future. What is their aspiration for the future? What kind of strategic objectives are they looking to fulfill, right? And associated with that, how can I serve my customers superior to competition? How do I create a competitive advantage for myself? And how do I ensure I have actually money available with me, margins happening adequately for me, so that I can further invest in the growth of my business? So this is applicable any point in time. It's not specific to the current context. Yeah, I'd like to thank all the participants for joining the session.